Hello, my name is Leonardo Jones, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to turn any 3D mesh in Blender into a group of cubes that can then be used as a reference for building that same shape in Minecraft. We'll be using a particle system that will place cubes along the faces of the mesh in a grid-like pattern. So let's get started. Here we have a new scene in Blender. We will not be deleting the default cube this time, so let's just put it to the side for now. Now we add the shape we want to convert. In this case, I'll be using the Suzanne mesh by pressing Shift A and selecting Mesh, then Monkey. Okay, now with the mesh selected, let's go to the Particles panel over here and add a new particle system. Now in order to make all the particles appear at once, change the end value over here to the same value as in start, in this case 1. That will make all particles appear on the first frame. Right now they are randomly distributed along the faces of the mesh, so in order to make them appear in a grid-like pattern, we press the Grid button over here. Make sure the Faces button is selected as well. Since we don't want the particles to fall or for them to be oriented in strange ways, under Physics we select the button No for No Physics. That way they will remain stationary. Next we go to Render and select the Object button. Now we can put the default cube to use by clicking this box next to Duplicate Object and selecting Cube. So, now we have a bunch of cubes in a grid-like pattern, though they are not quite the right size yet. You can change that by changing the size value over here, or the size value over here. But I prefer to adjust the size by selecting the original cube, switching to Edit mode, and then scaling the cube until I see the edges touching each other. Since this will only be a reference, it doesn't have to be exact, so it's okay as long as it looks good enough. As you can see, we already have our result, which is a bunch of cubes shaped like the original mesh. However, it is a little too blocky to make out the original shape. That is because the resolution is too low. We can increase the resolution over here, and that will make the result look a little better. Keep in mind that the higher the resolution, the more blocks you're going to need, and the larger the model will appear in your game world. I'm going to change this value here to 35. After changing the resolution, we will also need to resize our cube, using the same method as before to scale it until they are no longer overlapping. Now, with the monkey selected, we can click on Object, Apply, and select Make Duplicates Real to make it so each cube is its own individual object. We can now delete the original Suzanne mesh and our original cube as well. If you're having trouble selecting the monkey among all the cubes, press and hold Shift and Alt while selecting. That will open a Select menu showing all the objects under the mouse cursor, where you can select the monkey mesh. And there you have it. A group of cubes that reflect how the shape will look once it's been built in your game world. You can even tell how many blocks you're going to need by selecting all of the cubes and checking the object amount over here. Once you've chosen a spot to build your structure, and you have gathered all the blocks you'll need, it's time to start building. Start by switching to the front view, selecting the bottom layer in wireframe mode, and then pressing Shift-H to hide the unselected blocks. You can also do this by selecting the first layer and going into local view by pressing the slash on the numeric keypad. Now you have a good idea of how to distribute your blocks to form your first layer. You can go to the top view to get a better idea of the layout. Then it's just a matter of switching back and forth between Blender and Minecraft until you've placed your blocks accordingly. Once you're done with the first layer, it's time to move up. Either unhide the other cubes by pressing Alt-H, or exit local view by pressing the slash again and select the next layer from the bottom up. Except this time you should select the layer right below it as well. In this case it's the first layer you just built. Once you've isolated these two layers by using one of the previous methods, unselect them and then select only the top one. That way you can get a clear view of where each block in the new layer has to go in relation to the blocks in the previous layer. By repeating this method until you've reached the top layer, you'll have successfully finished replicating your structure in Minecraft. Now if you were to build the example used in this tutorial in your own Minecraft world, it would take several hundred blocks and many hours of work but eventually you'd have something that looked sort of like this.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
With this method, it becomes much easier to design and test out prototypes of large structures before you even start building. You can even change the material colors to indicate what kind of block you'll be using when building it, so you can get a better preview of your model and make the proper adjustments. That makes it much easier to make a structure that you're going to be satisfied with once it's done. If you're familiar with the remesh modifier, you might be wondering why not just use that instead. I'll show you why. Let me just add a new monkey, select the remesh modifier, use the blocks mode, and increase the resolution. While it may appear to show a similar result, if I were to apply the modifier and, while in edit mode, isolate a single layer, you can see that when using this modifier, you only get a shell of the mesh. That does not make it very clear where each block should go, especially when compared to the particle system method. And it doesn't even show how many blocks you're going to need during construction. Now, if you have access to a lot of Lego bricks and you like making Lego sculptures, this method can also be used to help build your desired shape. But first, you have to take into account that a unit of Lego brick is not a perfect cube. The sides of a 1x1 brick are approximately 0.8 centimeters across, but it is 0.96 centimeters tall, not counting the peg. That means that it is 1.2 times taller than it is wide. So, if you simply used the exact same method for Lego bricks, your shape would be slightly elongated along the z-axis. In order to fix that, you have to first flatten your shape a little bit and recalculate the particle system, so that once it's been applied, and you scale it up 1.2 times along the z-axis, the blocks will have the right proportions and your model will have been scaled back up to its original shape. So the question is, how much do you have to shrink the model so that it returns to its original shape once you increase its height by 1.2? Well, the answer is, you shrink it by the inverse of the amount, or rather 1 over 1.2. Fortunately, you don't have to calculate that because Blender will invert it for you. Just type S, then Z to restrain it to the Z-axis, then type 1.2, and then press the slash key on the numeric keypad, and the number will be inverted. Then just press Enter to confirm it. You'll notice that the particles haven't been updated, but all you have to do is change the value of either start or end to get them to follow the new shape. You can also add the little peg on top of the cube to give you a better idea of the final product by selecting the top face, snapping the 3D cursor to it, and adding a cylinder. Make sure it has very few sides though. Remember that it's going to be repeated a lot. This part doesn't have to be exact, since it's just for show, so don't worry about the actual proportions of the peg. After that, simply apply the blocks using the same method as before, delete the monkey and the original cube, then scale all of the cubes 1.2 times in the z-axis. And you're done. Then it's just a matter of following the same steps shown before, building it layer by layer until you've reached the top. And that's about it. I hope you find this method useful and that it'll help you fill your game world or your real world with the giant models of your choice. Until next time, bye!